Now that we're back in 3ds Max, we're going to be looking in this video how to apply that texture to this city model that we created earlier on in Photoshop. Now, if we go into perspective view, you'll see that this process is quite quick and probably easier than you imagine. So we've created earlier that city facade texture, and now we just need to apply the bitmap that we created earlier. I'm going to scroll down. You'll see that I have the original city facades, which is quite a dark version now. I've gone and brightened it just because it was making the render look a little bit too gloomy. So I've desaturated and brightened it just to get a slightly clearer image out of it. If I just preview that, that's what it looks like. So we're going to apply that to our diffuse, and we're going to show that in our viewport. And immediately we can apply it. Now, we're going to add a UV map. Press UV and enter, and then box mapping, and then here we will choose bitmap fit. And once again, we will just select that texture that we've been using, and we're going to scale the entire thing down. Now I'm going to square it out on this side so that the texture is equal in length on both sides. And I'm going to see what that gives us. Now you'll notice immediately that it's mapping on the roof as well, and we're going to get rid of that with a multi-layer material. First thing we want to do is we just want to see how these textures are looking. Now we know that our buildings are going to be a certain height, so what we can do at this point is you can count the amount of stories or the amount of levels that the buildings are on average, and then you can scale your texture to fit that. You can go and tweak that. You can basically zoom in here and you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you can just see that on average you need about, let's say, 15 stories, and you can go scale your texture according to that. Again, we're just going for that quick representation look. We're not going for the ultra realism. Now you'll notice here that these streaks here don't look very good. Most of them will disappear once we change the roof texture, but you can test out how different rotations work of the texture based on where your main view is. Now let's say the city is more or less aligned in that alignment. If you do have a city that is doing quite several different alignments, you can go and detach certain big chunks of the city and apply separate texture mapping to that to make it a little bit more accurate. In my case, I'm just going to go with an ultra fast route and just apply a single UV map to the whole thing. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to go back into the material editor and go up a level, and instead of V-Ray material, just go and choose multi-sub object. We want to keep the old material as the sub, and then here we only need two materials, one for the facade and one for the roofs. So this will be called facade. I typed that a bit too quickly there. And then this one will be the roof. And here we can create another V-Ray material, and that can then be called your roof. For now, let's just leave it gray and see what it does. And then this we can show again. Now if we go into Greeble, you'll see that we can either choose 2 or 3 materials. I mean, let's go back to 2 since we only have one facade and one other material. And you'll notice that it only is using a second material for the top Greeble extrusion, the little smaller squares on top. Now we want even this roof here to be of that color. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a edit poly, and we're just going to use this to select all of our facades by just selecting them from the bottom, and that means that it's only selected the bottom and the facade. Now if we press Ctrl I, it will invert that selection to only select all of the roofs. Now these are the parts that we want to have as our number 2 material ID, so we select number 2. Once we deselect that, you'll see that all of the city facades are as such, and all of these top extrusions are looking like this. Now, if you do want to go to the length of adding an extra facade to this, you can, but generally this will be like a mechanical area where there will just be a plain wall. Perhaps you want to make that a little bit shorter if it's looking too high. You can drop that down. Max height can perhaps be 500 if you think it's too big. You can do really what you think looks visually pleasing to your image. You can even edit it later once your project is final before you start rendering. So that is it. That is the total sum of what we're going to be doing for the city model. We're not going to go into more detail on that, since we prefer to spend our time on the project itself, and we all can't wait for that, can we? There you go. One last view. And just to sum it up, we're going to open up the site mesh so we can see that all together. And our project, as soon as we start building it now, is going to be sitting around about here. So in this video, what we've done is we've applied the texture that we created last time in Photoshop, and we've applied it to the entire Greeble model. And we've also gone and applied a different material ID to all the roofs so that only the facades are showing that texture. Now, if you would like, you could go further and you could texture the roofs. I'm going to leave it gray for now, just to keep it quite simple looking and quite conceptual. So there we have it, and in the next video we're going to be looking at how to start importing the plans for the actual building. And that is it for the context. Thank you.